that was when it kind of dawned upon me the level of athleticism. And I think probably the team that I played with was a mixture of very good players. There were some players from Sweden, Denmark. There was a lot of internationals on the squad, and then some really high-level athletes that maybe, weren't technically as solid, but brought something to the table because they were just athletic, motivated, and wanted to be a part of something. So it was a really cool squad to be a part of. My name's Kirsten. I was born in Aberdeen, Scotland. I went to the United States in 2004 and spent about 18 years of my life out there.
So where did your story begin, Kirsten?
In terms of going to the United States?
Sure.
So in 2004, I was finishing up university here. I was at University of Aberdeen. Hadn't necessarily planned on going to university, but my mum obviously had, so I ended up having a degree, which, thank you, Mum. I was playing with Aberdeen Football Club, but not necessarily wasn't happy with the level of play. I had a little spell with the Scottish U19s, and then when I was older than 19, I was never going to make it to the A squad. I just wasn't going to make that step up. So that was kind of where I felt like my development ended. And I was playing with a women's club, which is now way further on in its development. But at that point, I really felt like it didn't challenge me, and it wasn't something that I wanted to continue doing. So I was like, where's the next place that I can go and play football and continue to develop? And the United States was what kind of came up. So I started doing a little bit of research, and I stumbled across First Point. So I used First Point to get out to the United States. So that was 2004. And yeah.
Yeah. What was your biggest factor in deciding to go from the UK to the US, obviously to play and to study?
Don't think I really cared too much about studying, which I probably alluded to in my initial statement about not planning to go to university. I think it was to still have a challenge, to still play at a good level. I really enjoyed my experience with the Scottish U19s, which was the first real step up that I had, where I was training seriously, taking my life as an athlete serious, maybe making decisions about, I maybe don't want to drink alcohol at this point because I'm focused on playing. And I'd never got to that point in football before. So I think that kind of gave me a thirst for some more. And I was like, okay, well, let's see if I can continue this. But I didn't see a way I could continue it here in Scotland.
And was it everything that you'd imagined? You obviously weren't happy with the level here. And did you reach that level you were hoping for when you headed to the US?
Yeah, so I probably knew next to nothing about the United States in the college game. Obviously, I'd seen their national team and their success on the national stage, but didn't really know much about the college game. I did a little bit of research in my choice, in how I went about choosing a university. I basically looked at location. So I had offers from places that were north, and I was like, nope, not going anywhere that's cold. I want warm weather. Lo and behold, I now realize, and I tell every client that everywhere is hot in the summer in America, so that's not necessarily a way to make your decision. But I basically said, I want to look at somewhere Virginia and south, and started kind of looking that way. There was a couple of places that I talked to, a Division II program that I got quite far along the road with, and then Campbell University came along. Never heard of them, knew nothing about them, but the coaching staff there were really nice. The assistant coach that did the bulk of recruiting would spend a lot of time just calling the house, talking to my dad. He was a former pro, a Canadian guy that probably made my dad feel comfortable with me going out there. So yeah, I just said, okay, let's do that and let's figure it out.
You say that you knew next to nothing prior to going out to the US. Do you think even now that is still common for young people in sport to not be aware of the opportunities in the US?
Yeah, absolutely. So I initially in my mind was thinking, I'll go out there, I'll study another degree. I don't really care. I want to go play football. So I was all in to go and take another undergraduate degree. I didn't realize that there would be implications or rules or things that would stop me from doing that. So only when I got probably late on in the process with those two universities that I was talking to, did I realize that I only had 1 year of eligibility left, which in some ways really sucked, and in other ways, I think it was what it was meant to be. I'm a believer in fate, I think, and I kind of like feel like that year was, if you wanted me to put like a perfect year out in front of you, reflecting back on it, that was a perfect year, yeah. So the Campbell team that I walked into was a team with 10 other seniors on it, 10 seniors that had been there for the 4 years building something. So they were motivated, they were driven, and I think you asked me kind of like about the level or whatever. I didn't know what the level would be like, so I can remember coming off the plane, getting picked up at the airport and getting taken straight. I'd missed the first day or two of pre-season waiting for my visa, and so I got taken straight to training, and I stood on the sidelines, and they were playing just 11v11, having a scrimmage as they call it. Like, okay, so watched it, I'm like, I can play with them. That's all right, okay, all right, and felt comfortable about the level. Another 10 minutes went by, and I was like, whoa. They're still going at this pace, like this is frantic. And I can just remember going, oh, well, I can't do that. Like that's different. And so and that was when it kind of dawned upon me, the level of athleticism. And I think probably the team that I played with was a mixture of very good players. There were some players from Sweden, Denmark. There was a lot of internationals on the squad, and then some really high-level athletes that maybe, weren't technically as solid, but brought something to the table because they were just athletic, motivated, and wanted to be a part of something. So it was a really cool squad to be a part of, but competitive.
Yeah, and do you think, if you look at the differences in any sport, particularly female football or soccer, besides the terminology, differences between the US system and the UK system, can you touch on that?
Yeah, I think historically it's always been the athleticism. I think that's the same on the male side of the game as well. But I think if you look at the game out in the States now, they've developed hugely in terms of the coaching out there. And so the tactical awareness of coaches is above and beyond what it's been, I think, at any point. I think if you look at the female game in Britain, it's developed to a point where there's people here that would absolutely step in and they can compete at that level, and they played at that level because, like I said, Aberdeen Football Club's in a far different place now than it was when I was playing for it. So, they're getting the proper coaching and the proper investment as a player. So, if anything, they've come closer together. I think very much so on the men's side, and maybe kind of getting there on the women's side.
Which is exactly what we obviously want for our young people in sport. And thinking about opportunities, what are the opportunities like now for that 18 to 24-year-olds looking to potentially go out to the US to play and to study?
Yeah, I think there's numerous things that they can consider. I think I was lucky because, like I said, I didn't really understand much about what I was walking into, and I happened to just walk into a squad like that. But I think that when you talk to young people now, they are more switched on, so they've done their research and they have a little bit better of a grasp. And I think that that's sometimes harder because they know what they want, or they think that they know what they want, or they have a certain expectation that maybe they won't be able to get to because of something that's outside of their control. So that's kind of when we talk them through that part. But I think there's tons of different opportunities. The female side of the game especially, I think that there are so many programs out there at so many different levels. There really is a place for anyone to play. Obviously there's financial implications, but there really is a place for anyone to play. I think on the male side, probably slightly more competitive. So you have to bring something to the table to get that opportunity. But yeah, if they're motivated and they want it, they can kind of wiggle their way into it.
And what are you doing to help young people in these opportunities? Are you supporting them? Talk to me a bit about your role at the moment.
So working with talent management, I think I've always just kind of approached it with, this is what I discovered. But I think now I've been here for a little over a year, I'm learning a little bit from how the team does it, because there's a group that's been here for a number of years, and there's people in the company that have been doing this for a number of years, and trying to gather from their experience as well. So it's more so, rather than just giving my personal kind of input, I feel like now I have a little bit of insight into, you know, this is kind of what to expect. I feel like I've always had the flip side of it, having spent 10 plus years as a college coach. I always have that flip side of it, of this coach is doing that because, or this coach could be doing this because of that, or this because of that. You just don't know. You need to approach it like this. So I've always had I suppose a slightly different insight into it. And I think that's probably been helpful for clients, even once they're out there. I've had them connect with me because end of season's rolled around and they don't really know where they stand or how to approach it. And I've had that conversation with them maybe around Christmas time after their first semester in the States as well.
I mean, you've had a really well-rounded experience from player to coach to now managing young people and their applications to the States. I mean, what would be your biggest piece of advice for people coming through this program? Yeah, so I have always said academics is key. Like, my role after being a coach at an institution was being an academic advisor, and I've worked with some incredibly smart student athletes, like people that are just, you know, straight A students, 4.0 kids, and there's a certain motivation and way that they just develop themselves and they choose to be like that. And that usually goes hand in hand with a really motivated, dedicated athlete, and they're just a driven person. But academics is key. It's key to opening doors. It's key to making all of the opportunities. So I'll say it to people that are, you know, in their GCSEs or in their BTEC, well, you know, keep focusing on what you're doing in the classroom, because at the end of the day, that will have an impact on your future, which I know once you get into the workforce that nobody really cares about, you know, your high school grades or your GPA or, you know, whatever it is, if you graduated from a British university, your level of degree. But it definitely does at a certain point keep doors opening for you. So if you can kind of do everything you can and make as many doors open, it gives you a choice to make rather than there just being one door to walk through. So I always talk about that. I think the biggest thing I usually talk about with the female athletes is level of fitness, because I learned very quickly that I was not at that point. So you'll find, like, even as a coach, whether they're international or US based, first year students, freshmen, rarely make an impact on a squad because they're not at the level of fitness that they need to be. Once they play through however much impact they have on the season, go through a spring of spring training, then you'll see them come around in their second and their sophomore year. That's when you see them kind of impact, because they truly are fit. So I probably sometimes maybe scare them a little bit, but try and push them to realize you're not as fit as you need to be, because at the end of the day, that'll either result in them going out for preseason, picking up an injury, or just not being fit enough to pass fitness tests, which is one of the first things you'll know that you do when you get out there. They'll run you from there to there and see how quickly you do it, and if you don't meet the time, you'll do it again the next day until you pass it. So. And it's funny, ironic that you say academics being a really big part, given that that's not something you even really considered, but it goes hand in hand. Can you touch on the level and the quality of degrees out in the US?
Yeah, so and it's probably hindsight when I reflect back, and I would say I only realised that later, and I'm lucky that people just guided me to do things, and probably that I heeded their advice. So like I said, wasn't planning on going to university to get an undergraduate degree after finishing 5th and 6th year. I stayed for 5th and 6th year at school because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then because I only had 1 year of eligibility, I ended up studying a master's degree when I went out to the States. I didn't plan to stay and finish it. I know I said I stayed for 18 years, but I didn't plan to stay. I was gonna go start traveling the world after I'd completed that year. But people kind of said things like, well, why wouldn't you? You're halfway through it. You know, you've had part of it paid for. Here's another way that you could pay for the rest. And those were coaches, those were staff at the university. So I had parents that put me in the right place, and then I had support systems that kind of kept that kind of going along. I don't think I realized that until afterwards. That was a major impact. And a master's degree that I walked away with is a master's in education, which opened the door to why I stayed there so long. That made me able to teach at colleges and universities. And I think seeing the flip side. Yeah, so someone that didn't care about education ended up with a master's in education and ended up teaching at colleges and universities in the States. But it was something that kind of, opened doors for me. I think the level of academics is there for everyone, again, kind of like the football. So, I don't think I went to a particularly challenging institution in terms of academics, and because that wasn't important to me, it wasn't really a factor in what I was deciding. I just did what I did. But I know that some people will be making decisions based upon what they want and their aspirations that they want for their academics, because they need a certain degree because they want to go and study something postgraduate. And that's fine, but those are factors that you need to take into making a decision. And sometimes that's what drives someone's choices rather than, the football or the sporting side of it. That wasn't the case for me, but yeah, I understand it a lot more now, having gone through it. But tell an 18-year-old or a 21-year-old that they don't grasp that.
And I guess full circle, having been born in the UK, 18 years in the US, back to the UK, now a mother of two. If you can, what would be your biggest takeaway, I guess, in life, in sport, love, whatever it may be?
Probably think about paying things forward. If I think about people that have helped me all along the way, and it shocks me, I reach out to people that I've connected with now that I'm back in the UK and still have a connection with them. I might not have talked to them for 5 years, for 8 years, but I might have come across them at certain tournaments or certain networking events when I was out in the States, but that's no longer the case. But I might just email, or I might call, or I might text out of the blue, or I might reach out on social media, and hearing back from them is always great. And I think if you can pay it forward, and by that I kind of see, like, I'm always going to try and make sure that I pay forward the right fit for their program, and also the right fit in terms of for that student, because you never know when that kid's going to come back and be the person that's working next to you in the office or whatever it is. But I feel like networks are something that you make, so if you just keep kind of paying it forward, it's always going to hopefully come back to a good place. Believer in fate, so I think paying things forward is a nice way of, I guess, collecting the karma.